sad news. Jana Wissmann Duggar hospitalized, Stephen left devastated. Yes, the quiet hum of a Nebraska winter was shattered not by the howling wind, but by the piercing wail of an ambulance siren. For Stephen Wissmann, the sound marked the beginning of a nightmare he never anticipated. His wife, Jana, the eldest daughter of the most famous reality TV family in America, was fighting for her life. This isn't just a story about a health scare. It is a portrait of a woman who has spent her entire life under a microscope, a story of postpartum trauma, and a family dynasty crumbling under the weight of its own secrets. The emergency room doors swung shut, and behind them, the world of the Duggar family irrevocably changed once more. To understand the gravity of this moment, we must rewind. For years, Jana Duggar was the anomaly. While her sisters married young and started families of their own, she remained at home. She was the steady hand in the Duggar household, the sister mom who raised her younger siblings while the cameras rolled. For a generation of viewers who grew up watching 19 Kids and Counting, she was the unsung heroine, the reliable one, the martyr of the family. She seemed content, but the speculation was relentless. Why was she still single? Was she secretly waiting for a life beyond the confines of the Arkansas compound? Then, in August 2024, the world watched as she finally walked down the aisle, marrying Stephen Wissmann in a fairy tale wedding in Prairie Grove, Arkansas. It was a moment of triumph, a new beginning for the woman who had waited so long. The happiness was palpable. They settled in Nebraska, purchasing a modest fixer-upper home in Lincoln for a humble $275,000. A stark contrast to the sprawling estates of some of her siblings. They renovated it with their own hands, building a nest for the family they desperately wanted. He has a little house we bought that we've been fixing up and getting pulled together, and so that's been fun, Jana told people, her voice full of a quiet joy she had rarely been allowed to express. It was a perfect, quiet life. It was the life she had earned. And in December of 2025, it was completed with the arrival of their son, Archie Gerald Wissmann. The Instagram announcement was beaming with love. "Our hearts are completely changed," she wrote. For the first time in her life, she had her own family. She had her own home. She had her own future. But the fairy tale was about to take a terrifying turn. The first cracks began to show in the weeks leading up to the birth. In a video shared by her sister Duggar, fans noticed that Jana appeared heavily swollen. The internet, as it always does, did what it does best. It speculated. Social media immediately lit up with concerns of preeclampsia, a dangerous condition characterized by high blood pressure and swelling, which can be fatal if left untreated during or after pregnancy. The whispers were persistent. "She looks like she has preeclampsia or something," one worried commenter wrote. "Hope she's okay." Jana did not address the speculation directly, choosing to keep her private life, a luxury she had rarely been afforded, guarded. But the signs were there. The reality of the situation was far worse than anyone could have guessed. Then came the update. In a rare and vulnerable confession, Jana revealed the truth. The bliss of bringing home her newborn baby was shattered by a horrific infection. She was diagnosed with a postpartum infection of her uterine lining that had tragically begun to spread to her blood. By the time she and Stephen reached the emergency room, she was in very bad shape. The woman who had just given birth, the woman who had spent her entire life caring for others, was fighting for her life against a silent, invisible enemy. Stephen, the new father, was left holding their newborn son, watching his wife fade. The fear of losing her must have been paralyzing. "It has been a very long journey through a very challenging pregnancy, an unexpectedly scary postpartum journey," Jana wrote later, explaining that she had to be hospitalized for 3 days and 2 nights. The strength she showed was immense. She admitted that her initial recovery was slow and painful, a fact that made so much more sense in hindsight. She had been fighting an infection the whole time, but just as Jana was fighting her way back to health, The world she had tried to leave behind came crashing back in. The Duggar name, a brand built on wholesome values, is no stranger to scandal. The image of the perfect family shattered years ago with the conviction of her brother, Josh, for possessing child sexual abuse material. He is currently serving a 151-month, over 12 years sentence in federal prison. That was a wound that never healed. But now, the family patriarch is facing another crisis that hits even closer to home. On March 18, 2026, her brother Joseph Duggar was arrested in Florida and charged with lewd and lascivious behavior involving a minor. The details are gut-wrenching. The charges involve a 9-year-old girl who was on vacation with her family in Panama City Beach in 2020. He was released on a staggering $600,000 bond. To make matters worse, both Joseph and his wife Kendra were also charged with endangering the welfare of a minor. Kendra, reportedly dealing with the immense stress, has allegedly cut off communication with her own family and is facing legal issues regarding the safety of her children. The Duggar dynasty is falling apart. In the face of the new storm, Jana and Stephen Wissmann, fresh off her own medical crisis, did something unprecedented. They issued a statement. But it wasn't the usual evasive Duggar response that we have seen for decades. It was clear, condemning, and focused on the victim. "We are deeply saddened and heartbroken by the situation involving my brother Joseph," they wrote. "This news came as a shock to us, as we had no prior knowledge before it became public. Our hearts are with the child who has been harmed. This is a grievous and unacceptable wrong. We continue to pray for the victim and for justice to be carried out." They made no effort to defend Joseph or soften the blow. They did not hide behind the prayer in privacy script. This is a new Jana. The quiet sister has found her voice. She has drawn a line in the sand. But why is this so significant? Why did Jana, a new mother who was just recovering from a life-threatening infection, feel compelled to speak out? The answer lies in the legacy she is trying to build for her own son, Archie. The Duggar family's connection to the Institute of Basic Life Principles, IBLP, a fundamentalist organization that emphasizes strict patriarchal control, has come under intense scrutiny. Cousin Amy Duggar King, who has distanced herself from the family, recently revealed she has cut off contact because she needs to shield her son from the toxic cycles of abuse. Jana is breaking that cycle by choosing a different path. She is acknowledging the truth even when it is devastating. The juxtaposition of these two events, the hospitalization and the family scandal, paints a stark picture. Here is a woman who nearly lost her life to a physical illness while her family's reputation is being destroyed by a moral and legal plague. The stress of the Duggar family legacy is immense, but in the wake of her hospitalization and the public disgrace of her brother, Stephen and Jana have proven they are an unbreakable unit. They are protecting their peace, their family, and their son. They are refusing to be silent in the face of injustice. Jana Duggar may have once been the quiet, obedient sister, but the woman who left the hospital with her newborn in her arms is something else entirely. She is a survivor, and she is building a new legacy, one built not on shame, but on resilience and truth. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room cast an unforgiving glare on Stephen Wissmann's face as he clutched his newborn son, Archie, against his chest. The weight of the moment was suffocating. Just days earlier, he had been the happiest man on earth, watching his wife cradle their first child. Now, he was watching the same woman fight for every breath. Her body racked with an infection that had turned her postpartum joy into a desperate battle for survival. The doctors moved with urgency, their voices low and clinical, as they delivered news that no new father should ever have to hear. Jana's condition was critical. The infection had spread to her bloodstream, and every passing moment was precious. For Jana Duggar Wissmann, the journey to this hospital bed had been decades in the making. She was born into a world where cameras documented her every move, where her family's brand of fundamentalist Christianity dictated every aspect of her existence. As the eldest daughter of Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, she was thrust into a position of responsibility from an incredibly young age. While other children were playing with toys and exploring their childhoods, Jana was changing diapers, preparing meals, and managing a household that seemed to grow exponentially with each passing year. The term sister mom became synonymous with her identity, a label that carried both admiration and a heavy burden that few could truly understand. The world watched as her siblings paired off and started families of their own, each wedding and pregnancy announcement serving as a reminder of the life that seemed to elude her. Jill married Derek Dillard in 2014. Jessa followed with Ben Sewald later that same year. Jinger found love with Jeremy Volo in 2016. Joy Anna married Austin Forsythe in 2017. Even her younger sister Johanna, born years after Jana had already been caring for children, would eventually begin her own journey toward marriage. But Jana remained. She was the constant, the anchor, the one who stayed behind while others sailed into their own futures. The speculation about her singledom became a national pastime. Was she too picky? Was she secretly courting someone the cameras couldn't capture? Or was she simply content with her role as the family's backbone? The truth, as it often is, was far more nuanced. Jana wasn't waiting for a prince to rescue her from a tower. She was building something far more meaningful. She poured her creativity into projects around the family home, transforming spaces with a gardener's touch and a designer's eye. Her greenhouse became her sanctuary, a place where she could nurture life on her own terms. She traveled, experiencing the world beyond the confines of Arkansas. She quietly built a life that was her own, even as she continued to support her family in ways that often went unnoticed by the cameras. The narrative that she was simply waiting for marriage was a convenient simplification of a complex woman who was actually living a rich, full life on her own terms. When she finally did meet Stephen Wissmann, the connection was immediate and undeniable. Stephen came from a family that understood the Duggar lifestyle intimately. The Wissmann family, also deeply religious and musically gifted, had their own experience with large family dynamics and the pressures of public life. Their courtship was conducted with the same intentionality that characterized Jana's approach to everything. There were no rushed decisions, no impulsive choices. They took their time, building a foundation of friendship and mutual respect that would serve them well in the years to come. The engagement announcement in early 2024 sent waves of joy through the Duggar fan base. The woman who had waited so patiently was finally getting her happily ever after. The wedding itself was a masterpiece of understated elegance. Held in Prairie Grove, Arkansas, the ceremony was intimate yet grand, a celebration that honored both the Duggar and Wissmann traditions. Jana looked radiant in her gown, her face illuminated with the kind of happiness that had been years in the making. Stephen, dapper in his suit, couldn't take his eyes off his bride. The photographs captured a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. For the first time in her life, Jana was the center of her own story. The cameras that had documented her every move since childhood were now capturing the beginning of her own family, her own legacy. It was a new chapter, and the world was eager to see what it would bring. The move to Nebraska marked a significant departure from the Duggar family compound in Arkansas. Jana and Stephen settled into a modest home in Lincoln, a fixer-upper that they transformed with their own hands. The renovation became a labor of love, each nail hammered and wall painted, representing their commitment to building a life together. The neighbors welcomed the quiet couple who kept to themselves and seemed content in their new surroundings. There were no television crews, no constant scrutiny, just two people in love, building their future one room at a time. Jana found joy in the simple pleasures of homemaking, decorating their space with the same attention to detail she had brought to her greenhouse back in Arkansas. It was her home, her sanctuary, her refuge from a world that had watched her every move for decades. The pregnancy announcement was a moment of pure joy. The couple had been married for just over a year when they shared the news that they were expecting their first child. The Duggar family was ecstatic. For Jana, who had helped raise so many children, the prospect of having her own was almost surreal. She documented her pregnancy with the same careful attention she brought to everything, sharing updates with fans who had followed her journey for years. The baby shower was a celebration of love, with friends and family gathering to honor the soon-to-be mother. The gifts were thoughtful, the decorations perfect, and the joy palpable. After years of watching others experience this milestone, it was finally her turn. The birth of Archie Gerald Wissmann in December 2025 was everything they had hoped for and more. The announcement on Instagram was simple yet profound. Our hearts are completely changed. The photograph showed the new parents beaming with love, their newborn son cradled in their arms. For Jana, the moment represented the culmination of a lifetime of waiting and dreaming. For Stephen, it was the beginning of a new adventure. The couple had created a family of their own, a small but perfect unit in their Nebraska home. The future stretched before them, bright with possibility. They had no way of knowing that the joy of those first days would soon be eclipsed by a terrifying struggle for survival. The signs of trouble began to appear almost immediately after Archie's birth. Jana, who had always been healthy and resilient, felt something was wrong. The exhaustion that typically accompanies new motherhood was accompanied by a deepening fatigue that no amount of rest could cure. She developed a fever that refused to break. The swelling that had concerned fans during her pregnancy had not subsided. She tried to push through, attributing her symptoms to the normal challenges of postpartum recovery. But the body has a way of demanding attention when something is truly wrong, and Jana's body was sending unmistakable signals that could no longer be ignored. The infection that had taken hold was insidious. It had started in her uterine lining, a common but dangerous complication of childbirth. Left untreated, the infection had spread to her bloodstream, a condition known as sepsis. This was no minor illness. This was a life-threatening emergency that required immediate and aggressive intervention. When Stephen rushed Jana to the emergency room, the medical team sprang into action. The diagnosis was devastating. A postpartum infection that had progressed to sepsis. The woman who had just given birth was now fighting for her life, her body overwhelmed by an infection that had taken advantage of her weakened postpartum state. The days in the hospital were a blur of tests, treatments, and anxious waiting. Stephen, who had just become a father, was now facing the possibility of becoming a widower. He stayed by Jana's side, their newborn son nearby, praying for the woman he loved to pull through. The medical team worked tirelessly, administering powerful antibiotics and monitoring her vital signs around the clock. The infection was aggressive, but so was the woman fighting it. Jana, who had spent her entire life caring for others, was now the one being cared for. She was surrounded by love, supported by a husband who refused to leave her side, and a family that had mobilized to help however they could. The recovery was slow and painful. When Jana finally emerged from the hospital after 3 days and 2 nights, she was a shadow of the woman who had entered. The postpartum journey that should have been filled with newborn snuggles and quiet family moments had been replaced by doctor's visits, blood tests, and the slow process of regaining strength. The experience had been traumatic, not just physically, but emotionally. She had faced her own mortality in a way that few people ever do. The perspective that came with that near-death experience would shape her approach to life in profound ways, especially as she navigated the challenges that were about to unfold within her family. The news of Joseph Duggar's arrest came as Jana was still in the early stages of her recovery. The timing could not have been worse. Here she was, a new mother who had just survived a life-threatening infection, and now she was being forced to confront yet another scandal that would put the Duggar name back in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. The charges were devastating: lewd and lascivious behavior involving a minor, a 9-year-old girl who had been on vacation with her family in Panama City Beach in 2020. The details were stomach-churning. Joseph was released on a massive $600,000 bond, a sum that seemed almost incomprehensible. The family's legal troubles had reached a new disturbing level. Joseph's arrest was not just another scandal. It was a repudiation of everything the Duggar family had claimed to stand for.